Yes, it was.
Okay, we might have to sneak out for the city council, so I don't want to. Thank you, though. Thank you.
I thought you were on the road yourself, I didn't see people
No,
behind you.
there's-
I can't start away.
Let me know when you're ready. Okay, I am going to call to order the November 15th, 2021 regular meeting of the Tipp City Board of Education. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Whenever you're ready, Melanie. You ready for attendance?
Sorry, yeah,
Okay.
my system was just
Okay.
moving forward there.
Perfect
Oh
timing.
my goodness. Okay,
You got it for attendance.
President Dunaway,
Here.
Vice President Zakor,
Here.
Corinne Dahl,
Here.
Joellen Heatherly,
Here.
Simon Patry.
Here.
We're all in attendance. We have a quorum.
Great. Looking for an approval of the agenda. Motion in a second. I'll second. Mrs. Zakor and Mrs. Dunaway. Any discussion? Okay, ready for the roll, Melanie.
I have one, I was waiting until the end.
Okay,
Letting other people come in. In the consent agenda, C,
resignations.
yes, we have one to take off of there for now.
Okey doke.
That is Wanda Starner, custodian. Take that off the classified staff listing for now.
Okay, we've already reposted that job. So,
I'm done. That's all.
okay. All right. Anybody else besides Mr. Stefanik? So it remains as is. We'll just take one name out.
Yes.
Okay, got it? Yeah. Any other changes? Seeing that there's none, Melanie, you can go ahead and call roll.
Okay. Zakor,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Patry.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item 2A, Miami Valley CTC meeting minutes, those are attached. And moving on to superintendent comments, 3A, Mr. Stefanik, A, B, and C.
Okay, A, B, and C. First off, letter A, fall sports and championships. It's wonderful to say that I'm not going to read them all because there are too many. Our fall sports seasons were very successful. The students were very accomplished in their various sports. Just a quick rundown, and there's a complete listing with the agenda, but 6 league championships, a parcel of district qualifiers, district runners-up, boys soccer, girls soccer, and volleyball. We have regional semifinals for the football team to the again regional semifinals. Girls cross country were runners-up at the regional championships, and they were state qualifiers and ended up finishing 10th in the state. Again, you have various divisions, but the cool number to think of is you have 600 schools in the or 600 school districts in the state of Ohio, and they finished 10th in their division, and so that's a big accomplishment for the girls team. We had 4 students listed as players of the year for our conference, and wow. 37 first team all league selections, 29 second team all league selections, and then 5 honorable mentions to round it out. So a very high level of accomplishments in sports. extracurriculars are a huge part of the student experience at school, and to be in it for the joy of the sport and then to perform at that level is truly something to be recognized. So congratulations to all the athletes, all the coaches, and the entire athletic program for what occurred in the fall. That's 2 falls in a row of pretty exceptional performance. Letter B, what we're going to do is we're going to pause on the curriculum update. That's going to come in December or January when Dawn can be here. But professional development, it was mentioned at the last meeting that sometimes people wonder what occurs when students are off school and we have professional development days. So we have some listings here. This year, we're focusing a lot on high quality student data and how to collect that and how to use it to inform instruction and enhance practice. We're also working on developing formative and summative assessments to also inform practice, but also to progress monitor to make sure that we can see the growth and achievement that students are having on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. We brought in Mr. Borchers from the Miami County ESC. He's the curriculum director there. He took our teachers through a breakdown of the new OTES 2.0 evaluation system. Again, a heavy focus on that will be on high quality student data that will replace what used to be the student growth measures in the evaluation instrument. So the teachers are working on that with him. He's coming back in February to do a follow-up session with the teachers. We've also worked on iReady training for fall diagnostic data in English language arts and math. Not just about collecting it, but once we have the data, what can we do with it? And so that's getting into data analysis and actually using that for instructional improvements and differentiation of lessons. So those are major foci, if people want to go to the plural, focus for this year. And we started off with our first 2 professional development days focused on those areas. Third one, I'll bring in a partner for nutritional standards at Tipp City Schools. Each year, we have to report to the board that we are following all of the nutritional standards. And so I'll turn it over to Ms. Hagan and she can verify that for us.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to let you know the state requires an annual update. So I'm just making sure that we meet those requirements, that our food service is definitely following federal and state guidelines through our board policies 8500 and 8510. We definitely have a wonderful cafeteria staff that does an excellent job in making sure that our staff and students are fed and everything follows all the guidelines for the menu, etc. So I'd like to personally thank all of them for all their hard work that they do. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything else from you?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So later on in the agenda, we're going to get some information about nutritional services.
Correct.
And so you'll be waiting for them.
Yes, ma'am.
Yep.
Okay. Do you want to hand me the citizen comment sheet or pass it down? Thank you. Okay, we have 3 comments tonight. And first on the list is Don Watson. Please state your name and address, and Melanie will give you 5 minutes.
Don Watson, 335 West State Route 571, Tipp City, Ohio. A lot of times I speak on truth and what truth brings is freedom. And one thing that you people have probably already read, but it has an unknown author every time I read it, but it's good. 100 years from now, it will not matter what kind of car I drove, what kind of house I lived in, how much money I had in my bank account, nor what my clothes look like. But the world may be a little better because I was important in the life of a child. And I think that summarizes a lot of what our schools are about and why you all are in the position you are in. I would like to read a statement. You can answer true or false. If a statement in the 1950s. At Tippecanoe Schools, in our privilege to steward the approximately 2,340 days over 13 years spent on our campus, we are committed to make each of these days count with excellent academics and intentional discipleship and submission to biblical authority. We will never wave from our faith. And I just wanted to read that, and you can answer true or false if you still think it's being practiced in the things that change and don't change. I also would like to bring up a name that I've been reading about, Dr. Benjamin Rush. He was the father of the Declaration of Independence in our country with George Washington and Benjamin Franklin. He also was a medical doctor and often thought of father of American medicine. He helped establish 5 universities and also pioneered educational opportunities for women. And it's also thought to be the father of public schools under the Constitution. 3 propositions that he relied on was that the Bible contains more knowledge necessary to man in his present state than any other book in the world. That knowledge is most durable and religious instruction most useful when imparted in early life. And that the Bible, when not read in schools, is seldom read in any subsequent period of life. And then he left us with 5 things God wants you to remember in trying times. You're never alone, ever alone. Nothing takes him by surprise. When you're weak, he's strong. He's the God of new beginnings. His love never gives up on us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Before we move on to the next citizen comment, was there like a phone on or something out there? I saw you trying to.
Mine.
Okay. It was hard to
Can't get it shut
hear.
off.
Okay, thank you.
Didn't mind it.
Okay, Jill Broering, name and address, please. Well, I just said your name, but.
Good evening. My name is Jill Broering, and I live at 720 Columbine Court. I am affiliated with TCC Action LLC. However, tonight I am here to represent the approximately 1,500 Tipp City citizens who have recently signed the legal complaint requesting the removal of specific board members. In the last few months, an organized group of Tipp City citizens have addressed concerns, mobilized efforts, and collected signatures on this legal complaint to be filed within the Miami County Court of Common Pleas. I'm here to inform you that the required number of signatures has been met and exceeded. The community's preference is to avoid taking this to court. However, the complaint will be filed if resignations aren't forthcoming. How this complaint moves forward is your decision. In addition, I would like to thank the overwhelming number of community members who believe in this cause and who have supported it in many different ways. Your time, your voice, your monetary donations are appreciated by many. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Kathy Bone. Thank you. Name and address, 5 minutes.
Kathy Bone, 890 Michaels Road. City. Tipp City Schools will have 2 new board members in January. It's unfortunate who these 2 are. I spoke before the election of Amber Drum's Facebook page and her support of SEL, social emotional learning, a part of critical race theory being on her election page. Immediately, she took off the post she had of supporting SEL. Honey, Mrs. Strong? Sounds very deceitful to me. I also contacted Rick Maines, her running mate, as they campaigned for each other. He was not supportive of CRT, but did not know what SEL was. I explained it to him briefly, but he believes it's a path to a higher education set forth a few years ago, and he sent me that information. That SEL platform has been taken over by CASTLE, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. It is no longer a standalone platform of teaching, as it has become the standard for pushing critical race theory. Critical race theory and SEL is teaching children to hate themselves and others for the color of their skin. It is teaching children that if they are white, they are oppressors and bad people, and everyone else is oppressed. It is teaching sex education to kindergartners and elementary age children. I let him know about the sex education being taught to the kindergarten classes in Oakwood, as I laid out and gave you paperwork for last month. Mr. Maines also posted he needed everyone to vote for him and Amber because he needed her to help him accomplish what he wanted to do. I wonder what that really is. I was also at a meeting last week where Mrs. Drum apparently thought it was okay to sling mud at current board members who will still be on this board in January. I know for her comments, she has no plans of working together as a board for the students of Tipp City. This is just, as they say, someone putting a notch in their belt for themselves. She also did some mudslinging about an employee that works in the board office, so she no doubt will not be an asset to this board. It's unfortunate that people vote for someone because they're told to. It's also unfortunate that candidates themselves hide facts from the voters and do not tell their true intentions, and unfortunate that people do not do their research before they vote. Of course, we also have a board member who wholeheartedly supported these two candidates, as is evidenced in an op-ed that was written. So now we will have 3 board members who will undoubtedly push critical race theory of some sort on the kids of Tipp City. So unfortunately, this past election, it looks like the taxpayers, the parents, and especially the Tipp City students are the big losers. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. President comments. So we did, as just stated, we did just recently have a school board election, as all districts did in Ohio. And we do have Rick Maines Sr. here tonight and Amber Drum. So congratulations on being newly elected Tipp City school board members. And we'll see you in January. Don't have the date yet, but typically the first Monday that's established in December. We'll reach out, send an email, so you know when to be here. Okay, thank you. Treasurer's report, Melanie. A and B monthly financial report. Okay, I'll turn it over to you.
Right. Going over the month of October. Total revenues this month were very close to last year. Only 6,000 difference, so we're right. Can only say maybe timing of deposits or some results still of COVID are affecting the budget still. And we are having the new funding formulas coming into effect. I'll talk a little bit about that in the forecast. However, the transition is somewhat affecting our current revenue process.
Okay.
It's not truly changing a whole lot. There again, I'll talk about that here soon. The expenditures for October, there again, only a little bit slightly higher than October of 2020. And kind of looking over some things, really, it's due to the cost of goods, maybe would be increasing some of those expenditures. Regarding personnel, we did have 3 payrolls this month, so that certainly raises compared to October's where we might not have 3 paydays. That's going to increase also benefits for the staff. The healthcare fund, actually our new stop loss carrier, Sun Life, the new premium went into effect and they did not bill us for the month of October. They didn't bill us till November for 2 months. So we actually see a reduction in our claims for the month of October, which is a good thing. However, the total overall expenses were definitely lower because we didn't have the stop loss premium. But there again, we'll see that slight uptick in November because we had 2 premium payments in November. So basically, the lower the claims this month was probably one of our bonuses for October because we're watching our healthcare expenses. So I don't really have any other hot items for October for the board monthly report, but I am just requesting an approval for what I posted. So
I don't think we will.
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
I'll
Okay.
second.
So Mrs. Dunaway and Mrs. Heatherly, we obviously just discussed it. So if there's no further discussion, we are ready for the vote.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Dahl,
Abstain.
Patry,
Abstain.
and Zakor.
Yes. Motion carries.
Okay, then I will go into the 5-year forecast.
Looking for, do you want to
I'll
do the
move.
motion in
Go
a
ahead.
second?
I'll move.
I'll second. Mrs. Heatherly, Mrs. Dunaway. So go ahead, Lonnie.
Okay. I want to pull it up off the desktop. Otherwise here. Okay. For now, okay. So I just have some things on the screen. I'm sure the numbers are quite minute. And of course, that's shared in board docs.
Right, it is an attachment,
Yeah.
so, but thank you for putting it.
So
on the
just
screen.
a couple of the things, I'm just gonna touch on some things and then I'll pull up some of the graphs, but obviously, all you know, school districts are required to file the 5-year forecast twice a year. At one point, it was always October 30th, but it's now November 30th, last 2 years. And May 31st is the other forecast. And because the funding formula right now is still being decided upon and some of the final, the way the restricted grants and so forth are going to be set up. December, I think I'm going to give a little bit more detailed presentation. Well, I'm sorry, once everything is finalized, the May forecast, I think I'm going to put up some more detailed information because right now things are kind of in limbo on some of the line items for the forecast. So
Do you have any inkling of how the?
oh yeah, and I'm going to get
Funding.
into that. Yeah, sorry. So the forecast includes changes to the state aid, the new fair school funding plan, also the HB 110 is what they're trying to finalize right now. And we do know also on the forecast that the second half of the property taxes, the settlements from Miami County Auditor, so we have included that. I'm kind of just going down through some of the sections here, and I'll get into more detail. But obviously, the effects of COVID-19 still continue to impact our state, country, and global economies. So that definitely has a bearing on our 5-year forecast. Of course, our school district is very proud and happy that we've kept our kids in session. So even though we had maybe some additional expenditures, at least all of our kids were in school. The notes and assumptions here, and they are attached. It is an 18-page with all the notes and assumptions here. So I'm just going to pull up some, but those that are attached, definitely the notes it kind of explain why each line item is listed the way that it is. The funding structure is going to change. we used to have open enrollment deductions, community school deductions, STEM school deductions, and they were listed in certain areas of the forecast. And so they are planning on putting that in pretty much just a different line item. So it's going to be, your major foundation formula. It just, instead of being down like on the fourth line or the fifth line, they're kind of deciding which some grants are restricted, some are unrestricted. And those are the decisions that are being made right now.
Okay.
So we're not essentially losing any money. The next 2 years are pretty much fixed with what they're. After 2023 though, because this next budget will only be for 2 years, then the 23 through 26, we're not real sure what the next governor will bring in. So we always want to keep a heads on that. So.
And that's why we're always very conservative with our forecasting, because you don't know what the next governor is going to do.
Right. So the first 2 years have a better idea, and then you'll see some of the lines on here are pretty much just flat or consistent, since we don't know. One expense for the district is College Credit Plus. We have a lot of students that take advantage. It's a great program for our kids, but it is a cost to our district. So that will remain. That's not going to change. And of course, one of the major things of part of our forecast, and it's 63% of our school district money are the funds from our property taxes and the levies that we pass in our community year after year. We have a great history of passing our levies. If Tipp City did not have the positive percentage of levies passing, we would see, different programs and different things change for our district, and that is just not what we want. So obviously we hope, and we can always just make sure we can get our community support to keep our funding levels to where they need to be. So, regarding any expenditures, for the district this year, we brought in a few new positions. Didn't have to increase personnel expenses a whole lot because we took one large position and split it, but we did have to increase it somewhat because all of them have retirement, they all have health care, the board share of those things. So we did increase that. But overall, for personnel expenses, we only estimate roughly 2% increase after this year.
That's good.
So provided we're not, right now, I don't plan that we're bringing in any new positions forthcoming. I think we're happy with what we have as far as the administrative positions that we brought in. Regarding material and supplies, those things, I'm concerned about inflation right now. I'm concerned about the political environment we're in, and everything is just skyrocketing in price. So if our levy, for whatever reason, if we had a levy on the ballot come 24, it wouldn't pass. My concern at that time would be our spending has to go down, I would hate to see us have to lose people, that kind of thing. So there again, I always look at this, and then just growing up in Tipp and without levy support, I don't know where our district would be. And that comes back to our community and the people that live here. So, and our kids, of course, they're the ones to benefit. So when you get down to line 7.01 on the forecast, cash balance. So if you go over and you go into 2026, and of course, back to the levy discussion, our cash balance maintains itself, our funding. But if we were to get into a position where our levy would not pass, then we would be we'd be hurting. So, of course, with people that retire and leave, there's an option where you don't fill those positions, but we don't want to have to go there right now because we have enough for all of our kids. And of course, when your ADM changes, the forecast can change. You know, if we end up bringing in a whole area of town where they're gonna build up new houses, we get a lot more kids, we might have to hire a teacher, you know, then the forecast is kind of a living creature. You have to go back to it, revamp it. And so anyway, since I've been new here in the district and just learning this, I guess I can just see that, you know, each year we're pretty much gonna plan on spending, you know, everything is levy support, and in the forthcoming years, I just hope that we can maintain our community support. So keep our forecast where it needs to be. The graph that makes me the most nervous, and I don't, you know, the graphs are included in here. This one here, general fund revenue. You know, you look at that and you see, you know, expenses go up. And then we don't have our levy support, our cash balance. In the green there, it's not the best picture of it going down. So I know I already touched on some of these revenues. Real estate taxes are a huge portion of our revenue in Tipp City. Touched on most of these. We could probably explain each page and go into more detail, but I guess I can just maybe see if anyone has any questions that I can maybe explain more. I know I didn't really talk about all the restricted and unrestricted grant aid. It's all calculated for, it's just going to be in what line item it's going to be. So it mainly depends on our ADM. So if we can keep gaining some kids. Now open enrollment too, because I know that's been an issue in Tipp City over the years or whatever, but we would always just see either a big deduction or a big amount in. The new formula is going to only account for open enrolled kids. They're going to be a part of our kids. So it'll be on the line item, the foundation formula, which is the largest line, line one there. Instead of seeing open enrollment be separate, they will just assume that they are one of our numbers, and it won't be a separate line. So that's just one of the changes.
So will the amount differ, Mrs. Fox? If they're just one of ours, is that going to be foundation dollars?
Yeah,
or
it is
open
going to
dollars?
change.
So it will no longer be this 60-20 per head.
Right,
So
that is, that
closer to-
formula, that part of the formula is changing.
Wow.
And some of that stuff is what we don't really know.
We don't know what it will change to.
Right.
Okay.
Before it would always, they would make a deduction from our formula for kids that are going to other districts. And then when we had the kids coming into the district, then there was another line item that, so we could see, you know, the ins and outs. Well, now they're just gonna, you know, they're gonna lump it into the other. So I think the dollar amounts and for 3/20/23, so this year and next year, we're pretty stable, but going forward. And then of course, with the board, what we all have to do as far as getting our facilities and all of our things that we have on our plate, I know passing levies, and it's just gonna be a hot topic. And I hope we get full support from our community, that's all. So. And I don't think I have any other comments, but I would like to answer questions if you have any. Okay.
Well, first of all, I'd love to compliment you on this 5-year forecast. It was so comprehensive. I could have spent a lot of time and the explanatory portions were great. Thank you so much. There's a couple things that popped out, but going back to the first report, college credit expense on the forecast. Where was that located? That's the document before this one.
So on the forecast,
I didn't see that. Is
it's going to be in your
segregated out?
restricted aid. So in the calculation there, they look to see how many students, as far as, so college credit, you mean the expenditure?
Yes, expense. Mhm.
I think it's currently a deduction from our foundation formula. So I want to say. So when we do it's not an ESC deduction, but it's coming from the formula. I'm gonna have to double check in on what line item it is.
Because that question does come up a lot.
Yeah.
You know, what does it cost the district for college prep
Yeah.
plus?
Yeah, and it is a cost.
Oh, definitely.
And is there a way to?
I think it's a deduction from the formula that the money that we are receiving in the foundation. So it's a calculation from the total. It's a deduction is how we put it through.
It would be nice to have that number.
So, but yeah, let me get that for you.
Is there a way to include some information, perhaps, maybe looking 3 years back? So that we can have some basis for comparison?
Oh, I thought you were following up on college credit because I wasn't
I am.
quite finished. Oh, okay.
No, I'm not interrupting you, I'm just want to make sure that one, and how should we get that information? When should it be provided, like in a Friday board update or?
She's looking for it now.
I was thinking it was yeah.
You're talking about Joe and
And
see
then
like
that's
trending,
the
what's
career
been going
tech
on over
funds.
3 years.
Career
That
tech
might be
is
good.
gifted, so I think college credit plus is a deduction from the formula.
And then also how many, since you're gonna look at that number, also how many students leave our district? Like I think it's 84 this year, whether it's Troy Christian, CJ, you know, that's always another nice number to have. We'll need that for April conversations. You're gonna be in the same formula looking for that information. So it'd be nice to have, since you're doing that, also how many students, you know, are leaving the district, because that's also a cost.
Yeah, because then we have because right now it's kind of like an open enrollment now, you know, how many
Right,
kids are
right.
not, they live in Tipp City, but and that the SF-14, which I know I brought it up last board meeting, but that pretty much, so when there's a split family and say you have a court order, dad might live in Tipp, mom might live in Vandalia, that we get, you know, they take those situations and split the funding. It's kind of, it's an odd situation, but that's one restricted, as an example.
Right, most of the
Anyway.
numbers are for kids who are, you know, Troy Christian or CJ, that type of Stivers. Yeah, that's the majority.
The private, more of the private.
Yeah, so just include that because it's the same.
So we're looking for a whole number of the current school year of how many students are enrolled in other districts or other maybe online programs.
Yeah, that could be one too.
Because the private ones are not reported to the state. So there's no mandate to report that. So the state can't provide us with that information.
Right. We have some reporting because if we do transportation or in lieu of transportation, for those that may transport their child to that district.
Okay.
We can get some information.
And I think you still have more questions, right?
Yeah, I
Okay.
did. I know over 62% of the district's total income comes from local taxes. And I think
And
our,
levies. Yeah, levy and property tax, right?
okay, is that, okay, I guess
Levy and property
60,
tax.
okay. So the property tax collections, I think I read in here, Melanie, that it's down because of delinquencies in payment, and where did I find that? Does that sound right to you? It was a little lower than usual because of,
Yeah, I have that noted here, and sometimes, I mean, obviously every year they account for that. However,
And is it this line?
I do know that the money that was receipted in the last 2 times from property taxes has improved since I've been here. And what I've seen go in, and I've looked at the revenues. However, they always account for some loss of those that are delinquent, and there's usually a percentage each year that they'll account for.
This report's forecast risk and uncertainty talks about that we're not expecting any declines or delinquencies, and we believe that's a low risk on local collections.
Right, Tipp City overall has, the values have improved. The collections, I mean, they've always, historically been an improvement from year to year, an increase. We've had, new properties being built, and our property values have increased due to just the real estate market. And I don't know how sometimes they can even figure that your house goes up 50,000 in 1 year on some of these things that I look at, and I just think, well, however, if they assess school district values like they assess property values, it makes me concerned that, how high, you think of the property taxes going off of the assessed values, which we will have a triennial update in 2022 on the value of the school district. That also plays a part of the forecast. So at that point, that'll be something that will change from what this is even. Hopefully that's an improvement there again, because Tipp City overall,
So I have a
the values have
question.
improved.
I have a
over
question,
time.
Mrs. Fox, about your pie chart up there. It's under, okay, this is under expenditures assumptions. And it has the general operating fund expenditures. No, not that one. It's got wages, salary and benefits, 77.7%.
It's page
There it is.
13,
That's
page
it.
13.
Yes. Okay, so when I looked at that, wages 61%, benefits 22.4. So that totals to be about 83%. So I was just curious, in your box up there on the left hand, you have salary and benefits 77.7%. Where's the difference between the 77.7 and the 83.4?
Those two seem to be.
And the reason I honed in on that is because I just read at OSBA, there was a session on there about, the cost for school districts now and how it's getting kind of scary. And that typically in any district, about 83% of the expenditures go to personnel. Yes, to salaries and benefits.
Yeah.
So when I saw your 77 on that box, and then I added those two together, it got 83, which is more aligned with what they were saying at the conference.
Yeah, the pie chart shows 83.4, but your blue box says
Yeah,
77.7.
I'm trying to figure out why it's not totaling correctly. Something I missed. I'm going to have, before I submit that to the state, I'm going to update that
Yeah.
number in that box.
Okay,
All I can think of is it didn't gather it, and possibly it is pulling that in from last year.
okay.
So
So,
77%.
so we don't know, is it the
The system
is it
should
the
be
pieces
adding
of
that.
the pie that's off, or is it the box? My guess would be it's that box at 77.7.
Yeah, I don't think it's,
Melanie, I'm gonna get a calculator out and add all that up to you to see if it adds up to 100.
it should be adding up to 100.
Give me 1 second. Okay, so then I wanted to ask you a kind of a quick one.
None of these are big ones. I'm trying to figure out if that was just copied from last year. Yeah, and I just have the PDF on my system here. I don't have the Excel.
Maybe you can.
It's
look
a
into it.
pretty convoluted software package, so I
It
don't
does add
know
up to
why.
100.
Yeah.
The pie's correct, only the 77's off.
So I don't think it must not be a field, and it must be
That's good.
a hand typed field, so.
Okay. Then when I go to your second page,
This one,
no, the front, go to the very top. To the
Page
first.
2.
Yes, please, page 2. Okay, and then when you look at line 2.080, total revenues. And I just want a basic for layman's comprehension, Mrs. Fox, when you look at, let's say, start with fiscal year 2022, I understand that's a forecast. But then you have a $5 million drop by the time you get to the year 2026. Could you just give like a real simplified explanation, what's accounting for that 5 million drop from 22 to 26?
It's the expiration of levies.
Well,
Yeah, so
treasure,
I'm just trying to find the line item here. But I can't hear it.
it's line item.
So if you take the first line, 1.01, that is, your general property taxes. So you can see just from that, that's your income. Your income has
About a $4 million
is dropping because, when our levies fall off, our income's gonna drop pretty good. So that is total revenues and other financing sources. It continues to drop due to taxes. And that's gonna be any form of taxes. We have a few businesses in town that we've got some, payment in lieu of situations we've had our attorneys help us with, some things that, it's just given in school districts, and we have new construction, new companies move in, Hopefully, any of the businesses in town, we need thriving businesses in Tipp City. That's gonna help the business portion of our taxes that we bring in,
The high school's paid off in 2024, right? So, I mean, that's the same year the levy drops off, so.
Well, we have an emergency.
bond,
Yeah,
the
we
bond
have
drops
the
off.
bond.
We do
yeah.
have another levy that's
Yeah.
gonna need to be renewed for,
Yeah.
and that will start in that year.
Which one is that and what year is?
Yeah, we have the emergency levy, which was passed in
Right.
2019.
It was an automatic renewal, wasn't it? So what's the other one?
The bond, so there's the bond and then the levy.
What does that mean? The
I don't have all the
Give me a
dates.
continuous
The
renewal?
continuous, I guess.
Yeah, we charted it.
Yeah, that's, my mistake.
Any other questions, Anne?
No,
Any other board member have any questions while Anne's going through her document?
And just so, I'm sure you all know, this is the general fund. So this is, not our Title I funding. And, there's so many other types of funding, our local grants from the foundation, if, for example, we were so thankful to put, organizations like that, because it's a huge chunk of money that you don't see on here, I mean, we have a lot of different sources of income that we can bring in the money, and general fund is just more than half, of course, but it's amazing how many sources of income we get for Tipp City, so, which we should be very appreciative of.
Did you find your last question?
yes, I did.
Okay, go ahead.
Last question for me, Mrs. Fox, is I saw two different conflicting. The Government Finance Officers Association recommends no less than 60 days cash on hand. But that one you put in here about a bill, something you had no less, I think it was at a 30-day mark. So I noticed our cash on hand, true cash days in your,
In the back there.
in your bar graph there, you have in 2026, an estimated 63 true cash days. Yes, that one. So do you go by the 60-day number or the 30-day number?
Well, to be honest with you,
Because I think one was.
either one of those numbers are really not good. That's all that we could function, and only 60 days left. I mean, we would never even really want to think, or we would have to make cuts.
Right.
I mean, I understand I think I understand your question, but either way, I mean, I know that it seems like 60 days to operate and all that being in your cash fund just seems, I guess if that's the minimal that they'll allow, but I think that seems too dangerous, you know,
I think
we
we
can't-
can't do 60 days.
which we mean to maintain our support, so we don't have to go there, but
Actually,
I do know the auditor, I'm sure it would, with a district that it would only have, you know, $1 million or $2 million, or, you know, that's just bad. So hopefully, month to month, I mean, we're gonna watch expenditures and revenues, and which is one thing, our board monthly report, keeping in line with last October and the last 2 Octobers,
okay.
that helps us judge where we are, where we stand, where we can't, you know, afford to go if our expenditures exceed our revenues, you know, by too much.
Anybody else?
So we've given you several questions. Do you think that you could provide maybe an email with some of the either the clarification or the information that was requested tonight?
Sure. Do you want to put in the Friday board update, or do you think you can have it before that? Want to put it on with Mark's Friday board update, or do you want to?
Yeah, maybe I'll do that with Mark
Okay. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
by the end of
Is that
the week.
acceptable to you?
Sure.
Answer most of your questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll just put like a treasurer section in there and just attach that. Okay.
Are there any other questions for Melanie before we vote? Melanie, I think we're ready for the vote.
Okay. Heatherly? See, we had Heatherly and Dunaway, correct?
Okay, wait a minute.
Make
So
sure.
are we voting,
For the approval of the 5-year forecast.
are we voting for the approval based on the additional information we're requesting, or?
Well, we don't have that information yet, so we can't. I understand your question, but so right now we're voting on the approval of the 5-year forecast.
As is.
Right,
Yeah,
correct.
Yes,
Yeah, the figures won't change. I'll give some explanation, but the
Right.
actual figures, and then it's due by the 30th up
That-
to ODE.
I was gonna ask you
Which is
that,
why we have it on
which is
our
15
agenda
more
for
days we
tonight,
don't have,
so,
and we don't have a work session, so.
yeah, I mean, had there been something wrong, we could always fix it, but then we'd have to come back together. So
aren't you required?
I
to
think our
file with-
figures are good. I can definitely get more explanation.
Are you required to file this with the auditor, the Miami County auditor, or?
No, it goes to the Ohio Department of Education. So they, the auditors do look at our appropriation certificates that go to the Miami County auditor. Okay. So we have Heatherly,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Abstain.
Dahl,
Abstain.
Patry,
Same.
Zakor.
Yes.
All right.
You said yes, right? Okay, motion carries. And then my brain had to think about that for a second. Okay, motion carries. Oh, 2 yeses and 3 abstentions.
Yeah, it's
But
majority.
the majority is yes.
Don't count the abstentions.
Right. I know, it's very tricky. It doesn't come up very often. Okay, public records request update, that is attached for everybody to see. Any comments on that before I move on? Just a kind of like a update.
How are these being factored? Can you give me some explanation to remind me of how these numbers are? Are these estimates? Are these real costs? How are you figuring these?
So,
And
yeah.
are they, I guess, are cumulative?
I've prepared this. I asked, Mr. Stefanik and Mr. Bush here and myself, we figure out what we are spending since the last board meeting. We've kind of come together for a few moments to go over what we've done, if we've received any invoices for any type of request or, redaction of anything that we send to the public. And then I pretty much viewing payroll records, I try to say, what is our hourly rate? So I do sort of take that, our salary, we're salaried, so we probably don't really have a in and out time of our day. but I still estimate about an 8-hour day and then a 260 calendar, just because I try to figure out where, well, Mark and I are 12-month and Brad has a little bit shorter of a calendar, not much, but so when I say the hourly rate of pay, I am calculating that.
Yeah,
What
it's your
Mark is
per
putting
diem,
in,
it's your
myself.
per diem rate, right?
And then the other one is only particularly attorney costs on mine too. So I can update the public records. I think we're mostly current on all of our requests.
So to clarify, those attorney costs are attributed only to the public records requests that you were attending to this month. They are not reflective of our attorney costs for the month for other function or board
No.
business.
Correct,
That's right.
absolutely.
That's right.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah, just the public records.
Are you good?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Old business. 8A. Payroll procedures. Who wants to start this?
I asked that this be attached. My major concern about this is that we've never as a board circled around to fill our duties from the auditor.
Okay,
So this letter came, what's the date? I'm up at the top.
it was originally in May with the
May,
audit.
we initially received this letter.
Oh,
in
March, I'm sorry, March.
March of 21.
Correct.
And it goes through,
Yeah.
it lists non-compliance findings. There's various things in here. At the bottom of this letter is something that deeply concerned me when this came about and still concerns me now because I don't think we've ever addressed it. So just to get us started, my major concern is item 3. It says independent contractor versus employee status. Federal regulations require governments to report on a W-2 or 1099 form all salaries, wages, commissions, fees, and other forms of compensation for services rendered. Since individuals receiving 1099s are not considered employees, but contractors, they are not subject to withholdings and related employer contributions, STRS, the whole nine. During fiscal year 2020, the district paid individuals that served as instructors for the district Stagecrafters Summer Theater Program and a district-sponsored soccer camp as independent contractors. For the Stagecrafters program, there were 12 individuals that were compensated less than $600 that year. None received a Form 1099 for calendar year 2019. In addition, there were 2 individuals that served as a soccer camp instructors that were compensated less than $600, and none received a 1099 for calendar year 2020. The district did not make a determination as to the appropriate status of these individuals as independent contractors or employees. Failure to make an appropriate determination as to an individual's role as an independent contractor or employee could result in the district being liable for both the employee and employer share of required deductions should it be determined that the applicable individuals are employees. The district should consult with its legal counsel and the IRS to determine if such individuals should be considered employees or contractors. If determined to be employees, the district should determine if Medicare, retirement, and/or other deductions should be made, contact the IRS and retirement system to rectify the situation, and issue W-2s to the applicable individuals for the application for the applicable years. This issue will be referred to the IRS. My concern, and this is like, I think, the very basis kind of what school boards do, right? We're supposed to be the financial stewards of the community's money.
Correct.
So when this issue came up, there's a lot of other things going on, a lot of other hot button items, I would call them. And we've never addressed this. To my knowledge, before he left, the previous treasurer did not issue W-2s or 1099s. We did, I believe, receive direction that those individuals should have all been considered employees and gone through the employment because they're working directly with students. And that was, I think, the touch point, if I remember correctly. And Joella, you were in there. I believe Teresa, you were in these
Yeah.
conversations where we
Right.
discussed what determines whether or not you pay taxes as an independent contractor or whether they get taken out of payroll.
Correct.
And I think for the majority of these, they should have been funneled through payroll and not through POs because they were POing.
Right, because when you do a purchase order, it doesn't take out, as you mentioned, STRS, Medicare, FICA, all that stuff.
Mhm.
Right. So that was kind of the
My
determinant.
understanding, just from learning this, if the person is, servicing our kids and working for our kids in any way, shape, or form, they are an employee of the district, whether they're W-2'd or whatever, 1099. So the thing is, the 1099 group are, those people that come in and maybe a speaker, or we have, an outside private person that comes in to do anything else other than service our kids, like maybe, like I said, professional development. They could be like a painter. I want to come paint the board office, and you're a painter and you 1099. Okay. But if you're servicing the kids, which we're a business to do around here, then we have to withhold tax and retirement benefits. So personally, I'm a little thrown off at the timeline because I don't realize, I wasn't aware of the concern at hand. And I certainly would have, however, and Mark knows, I've been raising a few questions here and there with the agenda process, with putting on some of the athletic positions in that, but I thought, well, if this is what they've been doing, then, Northridge didn't have we had the volunteers, but we did the volunteers. They didn't get paid. That was just the setup down there. So when I just wasn't sure. And I think I was right though, because we should have taxes. And anyone with that gets, I always thought it was $500 for anything, should have had a 1099 too. Because had we not withheld the taxes, the 1099 puts the IRS on radar. Hey, he's going to be filing.
Is the flag 500 or 600?
Well, they're saying 600, but I think at one point it was 500.
I thought
That
it
was kind of, maybe that was what it was at one point.
I thought in 2019 when this came up, and again, I'm going back on, 2 years worth of memory, or probably 3 years worth of memory, but I thought it was 500, but we have to go on what it was during this time. Right. And then one of the volunteers received 1,500. So then that would clearly need a 1099 because that's above and beyond 600.
My recollection is the previous treasurer looked into this and found out that it could be handled either way, even though that you're recommending that your preference be handled this way. I remember that in order, first of all, they would have had to been hired as employees and vetted as employees, and then they'd have to be have a withholding, and we would have to be putting our contributions into the retirement system. And we were talking about the advantages and disadvantages of that when, like, the minimum amount to go in the amount for their retirement system was like $700. And some of them weren't even reaching $700. So I don't necessarily agree that they're employees. I think they're 1099 subcontracted service providers.
Well, it depends on what they're doing.
Well, what does the person who plays the piano for the choir? They're not doing anything with the kids other than playing the piano. So is that a 1099 service?
Well, do you mind?
Yeah, go ahead. I don't know. I'm
So
not sure
like
about
the-
that.
Right,
scenario.
the piano player, I don't even think received maybe $400 or $500.
Yeah, because that
So
did
they
come
were
up.
able to issue a PO. The reason this became a pivotal question is because people who were going to be working directly with students had not been fingerprinted.
There were no
Okay,
people,
and that's-
there were no people activity permits for the stage crafters, summer volunteers.
Right.
So that's kind of what started this whole.
So we did receive.
Background checks for sure.
Yeah,
It should have been the
we
number
weren't
one.
we did not do background checks, but Mrs. Dell and I got that corrected.
So the bottom line is that we did receive determination that anybody who was working in capacity with students directly, not a plumber coming in to fix the water fountain or to play the piano one night on one off. People who were working with students had to be issued a 10 or a W-2 actually,
Yeah.
not a 1099, because independent
W-2.
contractor assumes that they're licensed and bonded to do the work that they're doing, and none of those people were, right? Like,
Right.
what kind of 17-year-old goes and gets licensed and bonded to work in a school as a camp counselor? Nobody. So the determination was made and should have been followed. It is not, to my knowledge, ever been corrected. And as it says in the letter, this issue will be referred to the IRS. So whether we own it and correct it, or whether somebody else comes in and determines how it's going to be corrected, are two vastly different issues. So I think that I wanted to put this on the agenda to, again, get in front of issues that have been kind of left on the back burner as a lot of other things were going on. And just to remind this board that this is a huge part of our job, is making sure that things like this get addressed and addressed correctly.
So Melanie, the other piece of that too is crowdfunding, because we did have a student volunteer who was paid through crowdfunding, and that was, I'm not sure that was an acceptable practice. So I don't know if we need to do any type of 1099 or W-2 for that.
The crowdfunding will have to be addressed too, because that
Right.
was additional,
And
that
it
was a
was a-
supplemental like income almost.
Yeah, and it was a pretty decent amount of money.
Mhm.
What was it, 1,500?
I don't know, Joellen, it was your daughter, was it 1,500 or 1,200?
I don't know what the amount was.
Yeah, it was over, I believe it was over 1,000. It's
So what did the person do for the district?
stage crafters,
Oh,
summer
okay.
volunteer,
Okay.
the 2-week drama theater camp that we have. We have student volunteers come in and help the, like 1 year it was Mrs. Lammers, whatever teacher in our district takes that on. And then I believe the students, work with assigned groups throughout the week, whatever. I'm not sure if it's singing, acting, I'm not sure, but
The outcome
Well, because
was-
we didn't have it last
Right.
summer, probably because of COVID. So
COVID, right?
between May and July, I didn't see any type of.
We did have it,
have
we
any
did have it last year.
I didn't
We
have
did have it.
discussion.
Happened the year before.
Oh, okay.
The outcome was that
Maybe it was
this
Dave
whole
just
issue
didn't
was to be
go
addressed
easier with it.
into a policy. I've never seen a draft of policy to address any of those issues.
I don't remember it being a policy.
No, the recommendation was to address these issues by putting it into a policy.
I don't remember that. Do you remember that, Fred?
Well, the
Some of those are
auditor,
just IRS guidelines.
yeah, the
Yeah,
auditor
I'm just going by the
says
IRS guidelines. I didn't-
definitely contact the IRS. So I'm not sure if the previous audit or the previous treasurer made contact with the IRS before they left. However, the IRS needs to be contacted, it needs to be, the auditor of the state gave us pretty clear directions on what to do.
Right.
So I just want to make sure that this board,
Right. Well, now that I'm
And then the
here
new
and
board
we
members that
brought
are
this
here,
out,
right.
we're going to make sure that we address it properly.
And definitely check into, while we address
Oh,
it,
yeah.
definitely check into the crowdfunding, because I don't want that to come back up. I just want to correct everything at once. So the crowdfunding, and then also, just to be clear on your previous comment, our coaches, typically most of them are employees. So are we still paying coaches with purchase orders? Because we should not be.
So, yeah.
Or
as
when
soon
did
as
that
this
practice
issue, we've been preparing for this board meeting. We pulled 3 out of the
Okay.
county.
Right.
And we have spoken with those were in particular athletics. So I've talked to our athletic director and explained, the importance of making sure we do this correctly going forward. And
Right.
he understood, and him and Mrs. Copley, his secretary, already have voiced this to their
Okay.
coaching staff.
Right. Because
So
this
that
also,
part is
sorry,
in
go
the
ahead.
works. That's
Right, because this also came up about a year ago, where we had a volunteer who came in maybe 2 or 3 months after the fact and then wanted paid. And then at that point, Mrs. Dahl and I said, we can't do that. It's not policy. We brought up this whole issue of the 1099 purchase order. And so this is exactly, this should have been corrected then.
well,
Right? It
I
keeps
don't
coming
think
up.
that
We
the,
don't want it to keep coming up. We
right,
just,
I don't think it was the volunteer that wanted to be
they want,
paid. I think that the department, like I'm not saying it's this team,
Right.
whatever sports team
right,
said, at the end of the season, can so-and-so get a stipend for all the hard work that they did with us?
Correct.
The past season.
Right.
And it was a volunteer position, it was advertised and hired under such. And you can't go back and pay somebody for a volunteer position after a season. That was another thing that definitely came up, is that we have to be really clear when we advertise for openings.
Volunteer means volunteer. It's not
Right.
90 days later, then you get a,
Correct.
yeah.
Well, again.
Well, the source of the funding is a big deal too, because, we only account for, so many coaches, and when we want to bring a fourth and a fifth and a sixth coach in, which I understand we want to win our games. and
Right.
It's better the more coaches you have.
Right.
But our general fund doesn't support so many coaches, so we have to make sure we're either fundraising or we've got a lot involvement as far as where those revenues are, making sure we're paying them appropriately.
Well, it's even important too, because we approved a volunteer position. So when the board approves a volunteer position, that is a volunteer position, unless you don't just then pay.
Right.
That's not,
I don't know.
we have to go with what the board approved.
Well, that raised issues that if you're advertising it as a volunteer position.
Absolutely.
And then convert it to a paid position, had you advertised it
You
as a
might have gotten a
paid
whole different
from the
pool.
beginning, yes, the applicant pool might have.
I don't know what happened with that.
Oh, you were,
So
Exactly, but
it's-
that
it almost
probably-
comes across a little manipulative.
yeah, it was at the end of, it was months after season.
Well, we changed.
Which, as sources of revenue can all of a sudden come in, and then you're like,
Right.
well, but you gotta be fair, because you don't want to do that to other,
Yeah.
set a precedent on hiring.
Well, again, procedurally, the person was approved as a volunteer. Procedurally, it did not come back to this board to change the person to be paid through fundraising. That's what I recall, is that they wanted to pay the person under fundraising.
It doesn't matter.
It matters is procedurally, it should have come back among us to then change that, because he was approved as a volunteer.
Right, original, correct.
Right.
So what
Again, all of
procedure
these things are
changed then?
procedures. Where are
Right,
the
but we-
procedures for
Right, but
this?
we did change this last year. And we had volunteer status on a board agenda.
Yep.
We had an amount or sometimes a range of amounts that were supposed to come from fundraising. And then we had the actual coaches that are part of the supplement charts in the master agreement. The piece about fundraising playing a role in supplements, we've gotten some guidance on that. And so this issue about 1099 or W-2s, employees or contracted services, and as Ms. Fox said, where the funding comes from is all now underneath review and getting tidied up. And so all the decisions about compensation, let's just say, are going to come before the board, and all the funding will come out of the treasurer's office. And so there's still some work to be done about that middle ground between volunteer coaches and the coaches.
So we have a pay to play,
Master agreement.
and that's part of it. We charge our kids that want to play football, middle school and high school. Goes into the general fund.
The fees.
And then we have an athletic fund, which is where the kids can, do their fundraisers and then, buy their uniforms, their helmets. I mean, it's a different fund. So the 001, that pay to play money is going to cover, our salaries for our coaches. But as soon as we get over and above these number of coaches, then we're looking into maybe other sources of revenue, whether it's going to be that pay to play, or are they, they're not selling hot dogs so we can pay coaches. It's just like when you think of fundraising, and then you have your boosters in there, which is a whole another group of money. So we just want to make sure we're paying the coaches properly and the revenues are coming from.
Mark, have you received anything from the IRS on this?
We have received a letter, notification letter from the IRS.
When was that and what did it address? I'm just curious.
Well, we were trying to figure out what it did address.
Okay.
And we actually put the things together that was part of the management letter and this. And so we're actively pursuing aligning all of the accounts and actions that we had to take around this.
Can the board get a copy of that letter? Can we get a copy of that letter?
Yeah,
When did that letter come?
It actually came to Melanie. It may have come late summer, beginning of the school year.
Yeah, I would like to see a copy of that because it concerns the audit and, I'm assuming it's following up from the March 29th letter. So I would like to see a copy,
So, yeah, sure.
right? Good to know.
Well, I think it's really also good to know and to share with the public. These are the little behind the scene, not little, but behind
Yeah.
the scenes things that get addressed because you're attentive and you probe and you ask questions and you have a desire to keep it in a fair and proper avenue, not just look the other way. And that sometimes gets misinterpreted by people, or sometimes it requires even a legal expenditure to address the concern. So I'm just very glad that there are things that are being improved upon and being addressed. And so, it's-
Yeah, absolutely. I want to add, Mr. Maines and Mrs. Drum, I questioned stagecrafters a lot, and I received a lot of heat because of the last names that were involved, and people didn't really appreciate
I was right there with
my questioning.
Right.
But when it involves students and when you're seeking to make sure always the best interest of our students is at the heart of any question you ask, there is going to be a silver lining of where things get straightened out. And in this case, we had some procedures where we weren't fingerprinting kids, because we thought, oh, well, they're just kids, and then some cases came out later on in the state about kids that probably should have, been fingerprinted before they were allowed access to other children. And it's just always keep our students in your heart. Don't be afraid to ask tough questions. In fact, I would say if you're not getting heat, you're not doing your job, right? So, and then now we know where we can improve and where we can do things better. And it does get hard. I think you kind of already got a taste of that tonight. But stay true to our students, stay true to improving our schools, and it'll generally always work out for the best.
Right. So Mrs. Dell brings up a good point because the stagecrafters thing did come to our attention, my attention, because if you're going to have students or adults working with kids, there needs to be a background check. So prior to us going down this road, that was not happening. So that was a pretty big deal. Seems kind of obvious, but up until that point.
Because they weren't going through payroll.
Right.
And you're cutting a PO instead of paying them.
Right. So then it's considered a
It was
contractor.
an easy overlook, actually, yeah.
So anyway,
So who's managing those procedures now? Who's doing these background checks and
It comes
monitoring
out of-
that, and who's monitoring volunteers?
I believe it's Carrie Prawley.
Lisa?
It's Kristen.
Oh, Kristen now?
HR for the win.
There we
Okay.
go.
That was another awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was
So were background checks and volunteer assignments done for all stagecrafters this year?
Well, they weren't, they haven't come up yet since I've been here, the stagecraft.
But they weren't done last year when we held stagecrafters. So who would have been doing those then? Mrs. Prawl? Was she managing volunteers?
So did they list all the students on the board agenda? All the students' names that are going to be working in the stagecrafters group? So at that time, they were never checked at all because they were, under 18? Is that what it? I was just curious, even a volunteer that comes in and reads a book to a first grade.
When we dealt with it with.
we've even been checking parents that
previous-
come in and read.
Yeah, the previous
Yeah.
superintendent said that they had the procedures
Right.
in place to prevent that from
Yeah.
happening again.
So after that happened, even parents would, we have parents that come in and volunteer to read to students or classrooms or work for PTO. We were even background checking them.
Yeah, they should be.
So,
There's two different processes, yes.
right.
I think they were doing volunteer checks.
It's a different kind of a
I'm
background
sure they're
check.
doing background checks. Like a criminal background check?
Well, fingerprinting
Yeah, you get fingerprinted.
So what would be
They
a
take your
background?
license,
Okay.
Yeah.
right, and you get like this little, is it called BCI? You get like a little volunteer badge? BCI. I don't know if
Students
that's-
working with other
Yeah,
students, that's
no
kind of
background check.
Yeah, I just
new
got
for
one.
me as far as background checking a 17-year-old. I don't know if they just do it, or I'm thinking of legal adults, over 18 that might have like a felony or something. So I don't know. I'm sure they can pull it from someone that's.
So somebody's gonna send that letter to the entire Board of Education, the IRS letter that we've never seen. That's A. And then where are we in that process with getting all that together for did they give us a deadline? Did the IRS give us a deadline?
There's already.
Yeah, so-
Okay.
Records headed in their direction.
So they
Okay,
sent a list of some items. They had a couple questions regarding 2019.
Okay,
So I have provided the documentation requested, and I've overnighted it to a nice lady, Allison.
Okay.
and She and I are going to hopefully rectify the situation.
okay,
We'll start at 19. Anything comes up on the 2020 list, we'll work through that. And then if there's an employee or an issue that arises in 2020, what's going on in, November of 21, are they still here? We'll just have to make sure we're doing it properly.
did they suggest a forensic audit or anything like that?
No.
Okay,
No, she's just gonna go over the payroll reporting and the accounting, some of the payments that went out.
Okay.
So we're just gonna take it a day at a time.
When are these procedures anticipated? When is this whole policy and when is this coming before the board to approve? I mean, all of this
I know.
goes under a policy
Well, we
with
have-
procedures.
we background check now, which we weren't doing before, so I guess that's how we corrected it. I don't, right?
We can always put things in policy order. We put this underneath payroll practices, in the finance department. And so, we were putting it in an operational level. But if you wanted to put it into a board policy level, we can write up all the things that we're doing that are different.
Without looking at the policy, I'm sure that volunteers, I would hope that we are background checking our volunteers. But
Well, I think the
Without
board has a
reading it, I
function
don't-
too,
I don't know.
when these names become before the board and that information is then indicating whether they're a volunteer, there's probably an assumption that all volunteer background checking has been done. But the other process is like if that volunteer is being paid through fundraising, and then if that's omitted or if that changes during the season, like was suggested in the last scenario, that all of this information should be, pulled together under one policy and one procedure. It sounds like it's sort of outsourced in some payroll procedures, and a volunteer procedure.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like
Treasurer,
it's
central office, right?
all over the place. It sounds like.
Well, I just would also like to say though, when you say it's the board's responsibility, I certainly agree with that, but the board is made up of individuals. And so I'm very appreciative of the individuals that serve on this board that are comfortable enough to ask the tough questions, to require the information, and to carry things through, even though it's not always a popular thing, even though it doesn't always get accurately portrayed as that's what's happening. But the board is, not just the third person. The board is the people that serve on the board and how much they're committed to trying to do things the right way, and even have to take the heat for it sometimes.
Yeah, so this is clearly day-to-day operations. So if Mrs. Fox or Mr. Stefanik, if there's anything that you think needs to be an official policy, let the board know, send us an email, whatever, work session, because right now, since this has happened, it's kind of been handled in the central office or the treasurer's department. So. Anything, go ahead.
And just thank you, Mrs. Fox, for, I know you're, coming in new is a good thing because you're
Yeah, I'm learning.
questioning some things that maybe don't get questioned out of habit. So I really appreciate that.
Anything else on payroll
Thank you.
procedures? Oh, sorry. No, we're good? Mr.
I
Powell?
just want to make it clear that this did not happen under our current treasurer.
Right,
This was just something she's helping us
2019,
to rectify, correct?
right. I do have one question, Mr. Stefanik. We had a citizen come in, Mrs. Bone, at our previous board meeting, October board meeting, and she brought up the state report card, which those came out October 14th. I haven't heard anything about that. I haven't seen a copy of it. Have you gotten a copy of it?
We have a copy.
Okay.
This year's report cards were not laid out as report cards have been in the past.
I read that.
There are no grades.
Mhm.
What they have is they have student achievement information and growth information, and that information is out to the buildings. And the administrators and staff and school improvement teams are using that information to move forward. We can create a report, for the board.
I would really like
and
one.
send that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's important because that's what we're all here for, to educate kids. And even though we didn't receive a grade, typically in the past, the superintendent would do a presentation on it, superintendent and assistant superintendent. I did find out at Capitol Conference that it was handled differently this year. I then did some reading on that.
Right.
But yeah, if you could send us the report, I still want to see it. And then kind of give us your overview of it, your thoughts, if there's a plan for it, how you're going to use the data. Because we're here to educate kids.
Right.
Okay.
Very good.
Anything else under old business? New business, consent agenda items. Looking for a motion in a second. Motion in a second for the consent agenda. Anybody?
I'll move.
Looking for a second. I'll second. So we have Mrs. Dahl and Mrs. Dunaway.
Dahl,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Zakor.
Yes. Motion carries. 10A, new business. Miami County Foundation grant acceptance. Recommend approval to accept $9,274.79 in grant dollars from the Miami County Foundation. Looking for a motion in a second.
I'll move.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Mrs. Heatherly and Mrs. Zakor. And I will read those. Sensory items for self-regulation. The Sarah Ramsey, $718.78. Nevin Kopic, Muse Machine Artist and Residency Program. That was Mrs. Combs, $1,500. Broadway Elementary Tables for Outdoor Learning Space. That's Mrs. Smith, Broadway Principal, $1,900. General Genius, Mrs. Taylor, $1,495. A Johnston Farms field trip, Mrs. Bledsoe, $800. Tippecanoe High School Humanities Class, Cultural Heritage Studies, Mrs. Robertson, $680. A Sensory Garden, which is Mrs. Gentry, that was $1,492. And Unite in Red, which is Mrs. Potter, $689. So, we're just very appreciative of those grants. And it's important that we recognize the people that wrote the grant and the people who gave us the funding. Any other comments?
Yes, I'm glad to see that's no longer on a consent agenda,
Right.
because I'll pull it out.
It's important, right, it's important. Very important. Ready for the roll call, Melanie?
Okay, Heatherly,
Yes.
Zakor,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Motion carries. 10B, STEM grant acceptance. Recommend approval to accept $539 in grant dollars from the STEM boosters.
I'll move.
Second.
Mrs. Heatherly and Mrs. Zakor. Any comments? Any discussion?
I'd just like to thank Dr. English. He's always looking to support our STEM program in our schools. He made us aware of this grant opportunity and suggested that an incubator for the middle school would be an awesome addition to our program. And so he helped guide us through this process. And so I appreciate his partnership.
He is very passionate about the STEM boosters, no doubt about it. We're very blessed to have him. Ready, Melanie?
Heatherly,
Yes.
Zakor,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Motion carries. 10C, SNS Food Service Consulting. Recommend approval to hire Bonnie Berkemeyer Muckenthaler, if I said that correctly, S&S Food Service Consultant, starting January 1st, 2020 for $8,550. Looking for a motion in a second.
I'll move.
I'll second. Mrs. Dahl and Mrs. Dunaway. And any discussion? I believe you're gonna, or do you need to speak or no? We good?
Ms. Hagan's here for Q&A.
Oh, if there's any questions, okay.
Yes, yes.
Does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Hagan?
Just a little fun. It'll start in January 2022.
Oh, did I say 2020?
Yeah, yeah.
I had a feeling I did.
We're not gonna go retroactive.
No,
We'll stick with
2022.
that.
Thank you for correcting me on that.
Kim, I think I know some of the answers, but could you tell us why we need this new contract and what the advantage of having the contract would be? And what's the
Sure.
benefit to the district?
Yeah, she, I know you all kind of seen the flyers in Mr. Stefanik's Friday board updates, but she is strictly a consulting and she is through EPC. Right now, we are in a real struggle with food, believe it or not, trying to purchase food. And then when you do find it, it's extremely expensive. She is through the EPC. She currently already helps 8 districts. We would be her 9th, but she has other people that also assist her. And she can help us. She's been wonderful to get some knowledge from. With me being new and not really having a lot of training, I don't know what I don't know, and I need to make sure that we're following procedures properly. And the best part is she's been teaching me a lot.
Awesome.
And she's just been doing that off the cuff because that's EPC. We are members, so they have been wonderful to lean on. She met with our cafeteria managers, all 5 of them.
Wow.
Talked about different things they could do with menus to try to tweak, because right now where our cafeteria managers are at, they're struggling with trying to get the food they want on their menus. So she talked to them. She said, hey, I can help you out. You know, we can kind of tweak things. Have you tried this product? They didn't even know it existed. And then she also will help with our website to where the menus, she's going to work with each cafeteria manager. And when you go to the website and you hover over that menu or that particular food item, it will break it down into all the information you would need if you're a diabetic, if you have allergens. It's pretty phenomenal what she does. And she was very interested in one of our cafeteria managers, because they're very creative on their own.
Oh,
So anyway, she was like, oh,
to the lucky people in that
how do you do
building.
this and so they really kind of hit it off, and they were brainstorming together, because he's like, I can't get this, but I can get that. And so I think it would, 1, benefit our kids, but 2, it would help us also to be able to find the proper foods that we need. It would help our school nurses immensely, because they can go and get all the information they need.
And
then some.
allergies.
Yeah,
That's a big
it's
one.
pretty phenomenal. Then the other piece with her too is she also has a business degree. She's been doing that. She's retired. She's been doing food service for over 30 some years. So she not only looks at that piece, she looks at the financial piece. Where can we save some money? Where can we pull from here and save there? And so she's got some great ideas. I know she's really turned around the other 8 districts that she assists. And it would only be for a half a year would be our contract to try to test it out, you know, and see where we're at. We really feel already she's going to be a benefit to all of us, from the financial end to the food service end. So hopefully I helped answer a few of those questions.
Well, you bring up a really good point, because, you know, just going to the grocery store as a mother of one family, whole sections of food gone. So I can't imagine trying to feed 1,300, you know, however, you know, the students, 13 grades, 2,600 students. you know, what do you do? There's no peas.
Yeah.
No one can get you. So the timing is perfect. And we're still, the state of Ohio is still on free lunch. So not only is there a food shortage, we have more kids eating lunch, which is good.
Yeah.
But it makes our problem worse, finding food. So I think it's great. And thank you for being proactive.
You're welcome. And actually, I learned about it through Mr. Stevens, who went to West Milton, and they utilized it. And he goes, oh my goodness, I wish
Game changer.
I would have known about this back when I was at Tipp. And so he contacted me because he knew I was just really getting
Yeah.
in with EPC and learning how we can save so much money here and there. And I didn't realize it existed either. So I must give him some credit for leading us in that direction. But when she met with Mr. Stefanik and myself, and then the 5 cafeteria managers, and helping them to be able to find food, because right now that's where we're at. We're like, oh my goodness. And they're spending hours and hours trying to
Find apples.
tweak their menus and find where they can get a substitute for to make sure that we're still in compliance. So that's kind of where we're at. And we're just kind of happy that it happened when it did, because we really need some help. A lot of districts do,
So Kim, if we start buying food in bulk, because you said we're in 9th district, this salary will pay for itself. I mean, because if we save $2,000 on, you know, buying the same
Yeah.
produce at the other,
She
that'll
showed
line up
us-
quick.
She showed us some budget
Yeah.
sheets where
yeah,
the yearly rate
What-
is just
zero.
about twice this.
right.
And she
Knocked it
far
out.
exceeded the way the budget turned around, that it covered the expense
With the
to the
savings,
district.
yeah.
Yes.
Not only that, some districts have a food service director, which does some of that, and then you're paying benefits and so forth.
Well, they make about $50,000. We've looked into that before here, and it's about 50 grand, and it was just cost prohibitive at the time.
So Ken, is this gonna be a recurrent contract or is this a one-time? I realize we're only getting for, this is half a year, but do you see
We
this?
can end at any time. We don't have to renew if we feel at the end of the year it was not as beneficial as we thought it would be. But if we did see improvements and we feel it is a benefit, then we would obviously ask again if we could renew for the following year.
What are the other districts doing?
They do pretty much the same thing. It's renewed annually. It's not like a 3 to 5 year contract. It's an annual.
So I'm looking at this contract and it's saying it's effective July 1st of 2021.
I saw that.
We already passed. The other thing, it's indicating it's a quarterly fee of $42.75.
Yep.
And so when I'm looking at this, the total exceeds what we're approving it for, and we're approving, looks like a contract retroactively. Additionally, the contract's termination provision doesn't provide us the ability to terminate for any reason. It appears to imply that we have to have a reason that they failed to satisfy their obligation under the contract. And so based on this, it would look like we're on the hook for a year's worth of expense, or roughly 16,000 versus the 8,000 and change. Is
Yeah.
it the contract that needs to be revised? Or
Yes, she said that they will revise it. I'm looking at my email right here. It said the appropriation from January 1st would be 6 months or $8,550. They would adjust that if the board would approve. We have not signed a contract. We've not even agreed to a contract until obviously the board would approve it. And then they would go in, but I have this in her email that yes, they would go on ahead and do that. They would definitely lock that price in for 5 years, but at no time do we have to renew. We just have to give them 30-day notice of us not wanting to continue on.
So we need a clean contract, do you know what I mean?
Yes, yeah, 100%, yeah. But she wasn't gonna go and do a lot of work if it wasn't approved.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
Which budget is this gonna come out of? Is it the general budget or the food service budget?
it would be out of food service, it should be. But I don't know, that's Melanie, she's the treasurer. I don't know.
So I would have to look at the amount. Right now, our food services, even on this report that I put in, it's like $40,000. So we're tight. We seem to fund our food services account occasionally from the general fund. revenue.
We often do it in advance, and that's, I don't recall us doing it in advance this year, so I'm just wondering if we need to do.
With free and reduced, we get quite a
Or-
bit of money for that. Yep. And so we've actually been very fortunate to be in the black last year and this year due to that.
Wow, we never are.
And I know, but it's
Kids will
because
start
of the-
paying lunch fees again. and that's
because of
gonna bring us
everything
back to
being
normal,
free.
hopefully.
The state, I turn in a report monthly. It's called a CN7. And then the state reimburses us for all the lunches. And so that's been a good thing. However, that's not going to last forever. Hence why we would like Bonnie on board to look at what we're doing so that we never get in the red like we were in the past.
Oh, yeah.
And because we have that balance that we can pull from, then we felt like now's the time to try to learn as much as we can and go that route.
So it's coming out of the food service budget? Melanie?
Yes, I mean, it's typically it should be food service, purchase services, so that's where we'll plan to expense it out of.
Mrs. Hagan, I have a couple of questions. So the because I was confused on the 8,550, that is what the fee would be from January 2022 through June?
Through July.
Through July. And is that it? Then we're not also doing the quarterly $4,275. Okay.
It's a
Wow.
one-time fee
Okay.
and until the end. And then if we opt to renew.
Continue with it.
Correct.
And it's going to be closer to that 4,000 something quarterly.
Correct.
Okay. And also, do we have a school breakfast program?
No, we do not.
Because I noticed that's in the contract.
Yeah, that's if most school districts do have that. We do not.
So shouldn't we get a little reduction on that fee? Because they're partnering on this and we're not doing anything with the breakfast part of it. So why are we paying a full price on, I mean, has that ever been proposed to her?
No, I can certainly do that, but I think it's a standard fee that they do across the
Mhm.
board. I'm not sure if West Milton does breakfast, but I know several of the districts she does, they do breakfast.
I wouldn't think that Oakwood's on here. I wouldn't think that Oakwood probably does free breakfast. I'd be surprised.
But maybe, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
it's-
maybe,
it's a whole.
Yeah, I can reach out to her and ask.
And then on the term, I did notice that it does allow number 9 on this compliance consulting agreement. Number 9, the second paragraph states that either party who fails to meet or fulfill the terms may give a 30-day written notice.
Mhm.
Okay, so there is an out there.
Yes.
Okay,
The out is only if one of the parties has failed to fulfill the terms.
right. Well.
And it's not,
Yeah,
you
it's
can't
just what I read.
terminate it. You can't terminate it just
Wow.
because you don't want it anymore.
Correct, but I'm just reading, that's what I read, that there is in fact a clause there for termination if they are not fulfilling their part, or of course, if we're not fulfilling ours. So then what are we agreeing to tonight? Because the
Well,
dates are
yeah,
incorrect on this form.
We could do it one of two ways. We can take the contract out, or we can amend it, recommend approval to hire Bonnie, pending contract, or, I don't know. What's your suggestion, Mr. Stefanik? Because obviously we knew this was
Yeah.
a sample contract. It wasn't like the real contract.
Right, in other times,
Boilerplate.
this board has
Right.
actually said, permit Ms. Hagan to negotiate the final contract for the January to June 30th window with this company or with the consultant, and give her the ability to do that, and then we would bring the finalized contract back at the December meeting.
So why don't you because this is gonna start in January, we don't have any work sessions, our board meeting, we have Christmas.
Right.
So I would suggest sending it to us ahead of time, so if we do have these types of questions, because 5 sets of eyes are better than 2 sets of eyes, and then we can funnel it back so that it's clean and good to go for the December board meeting.
It's fine.
because then we're gonna be out of time. That's it. So, because then January, it should start.
Sounds like she's a good resource for our district.
Yeah, she's great. So I'll reach out to her and get all that.
Thank you.
Together.
And then
we
usually
can
Helen
do it in
reviews our
December.
contracts as well.
Mhm.
She's really good at finding
Okay,
little things.
sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments?
So we will not take a vote this evening.
No, we're gonna approve it, and then
Okay.
this is like a boilerplate contract. Nothing's been signed. It's not,
Right.
it's just kind of an example. And then Mrs. Hagan is gonna get us the correct contract. And we're all gonna receive a copy of it, and if we have questions, we'll one of those back to Mr. Stefanik.
I think we need to amend the motion then.
That was my suggestion, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, yeah, then the motion to say recommend.
It's pretty good, starting January 1, 2022 for that.
Right.
Work to,
Yeah, I mean, we're approving it for January.
yeah, you want to hire.
And we haven't signed anything yet, so,
Right.
right.
Hire Bonnie Berkmeyer as a food service consultant, January through, is it through June 30th, it's the fiscal year, or is it through July?
I was thinking it was through July. I'd have to.
The contract indicated June 30th, 2022 on the previous.
Yeah, so it's based on the fiscal year, so last 6 months of the fiscal year. And then final contract to be presented at the December meeting.
You good, Melanie?
So recommend, so now when somehow it had consent, or this particular item said consent next to it. So when we did our consent vote, it took my motion away.
Oh,
So you may not have seen that, but
okay.
when I
didn't see
got
it.
down here to this item and the next item actually, but it's not a big deal. It just took my motion out and it said approval of the consent agenda, which we don't want. So I have recommend approval of the SNS food service consulting contract, January through June of 2022. Would that be okay?
We're
For
$8,000.
$8,550.
8,000. Is it, would it start? Kim, does that sound about right? It would
Starting
start in
January?
Then if we.
Yeah, it'd be January
All right.
1st.
January 1st, 2022 for $8,550. Recommend approval to hire Bonnie Berkemeyer Muckenthaler.
Yeah, that's the part that came out.
Yeah,
So Bonnie, I'm sorry, you can spell her
Bonnie.
name for me.
Berkemeyer, BERKEMEYER hyphen MUCKENTHALER, comma, SNS food service, one word consultant. Do you want to read it back?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Recommend approval for Bonnie.
To hire.
Meyer.
To hire.
Okay, to hire.
So change it and then read it back.
Recommend approval to hire Bonnie Berkmeyer Muckenthaler, SNS Food Service Consulting
Consultant,
comma. Contract. Do we still want that January through
starting
June?
January 1st.
Don't put the word contract in there.
Yeah, starting January 1st, comma, 2022 for $8,550.
Then final contract to be presented at the December board meeting.
December board meeting. What's the date?
I think it's like the 14th. Give me 1 second. Oh,
It's
hang
the
on.
14th.
14th. Thank you for checking. I'm so jealous. Let's read it back, please.
Recommend approval to hire Bonnie Berkmeyer Muckenthaler of the comma, SNS Food Service Consultant,
Comma,
starting January 2022.
January 1st,
January 1,
January 1st. Go ahead,
2022 for $8,550.
period. Okay,
Final contract presented, or to be presented at December 14th board meeting.
Yeah, I just want to check that date, but Corinne says it's not.
It's not the 14th?
Oh my gosh, I'm glad I checked. Corinne Dowell, it's December 13th.
Are you
You're
serious?
in big trouble. You're lucky it's the 13th, Melanie.
I thought it was.
I have it the 14th on mine.
Am I wrong? No,
No,
it's a Monday. Look at my calendar.
I have it
It's
on a
the
Tuesday.
13th. We're not meeting on a Tuesday. We always meet on Mondays. We've been doing this for 4 years. Your
What's
phone is
wrong with
crazy.
you?
I don't know.
I've got the 13th.
No offense, and I'm glad I didn't trust you.
They're freaked out.
All right, are you good, Melanie? It's the 13th. Somebody was overly excited about our last meeting.
December
Go ahead.
2021.
Read that second sentence. I think we got the first sentence down.
Final contract to be presented at December 13th, 2021 board meeting.
Right. I think we're good.
Okay, and then I have Dahl and Dunaway, correct?
We'll
Okay,
call them. Yeah, go ahead,
I want to
yeah.
make sure the missioners are.
Yep.
Okay. Dahl,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Patry,
Same.
and Zakor.
Yes. Motion carries. 10D. After school supervision. Recommend approval of the following staff member for 2021-2022 after school supervision to be paid at the after school supervision rate. I'll make the motion. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Dunaway and Mrs. Dahl, is there any discussion? Ready for the vote, Melanie?
Wait a minute.
Oh,
Let's
sorry.
Please see public content below. Did I miss something?
It's just the name.
That's the person.
It's the name of the person. Is yours blank?
I know, it has person's
Just one.
name. I'm just curious what it meant.
Just
Yeah.
one person.
That's the person who's going to be
I
doing the,
understand.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, we had a list at another board meeting of several
Yeah.
people, and this is just an
Right, an
additional
additional
one.
one.
Yes.
Ready for the vote, Melanie?
Okay. Dunaway,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Patry,
Yes.
Zakor.
Yes. Motion carries. 10E. Recommend approval of the following Tipp City Library Board of Trustee nomination, Frank Senna, 7-year term from 2022 to 2028. Boy, that seems like way up in the future, doesn't it? Looking for a motion and a second.
I'll move.
Second? If there's no second, we'll have to move on to item F.
I'll second.
Okay, Mrs. Heatherly and Mr. Patry, is there any discussion?
Wow, it seems like we've been talking about the
A
library.
year. I know, 1 year.
And we did
1
have
year.
it over many different meetings, so I Googled, I went to the search for policies. And I typed it all different ways. I can't find the policy for library trustee appointment. So I'm asking, has that policy is it a policy? Has it been finalized?
There's a procedure.
Yeah, it's a,
Guideline.
yeah, procedure guideline, August board meeting.
A procedure? And where do procedures go?
There are no policies also.
Administrative guidelines.
You move over to your little arrow under policy.
That's my point though, Mrs. Heatherly, I can't find it anywhere, any reference to it at all.
So it's not an actual policy.
Well, we adopted it as a policy.
Well, for some reason, it hasn't been assigned any type of,
What was the policy number, do you remember?
yeah, there's no policy number.
I don't believe there's a number on it. It was read and the second read was done.
Yeah, that was the
So-
August board
So
meeting.
did you, yeah, so Mr. Patry, I know you worked on that quite a bit. So you don't have a policy number. There is no policy number.
We do not have a policy number, it appears.
Do we have it entered as a policy anywhere?
We approved it. This board voted and approved it as a policy.
So where is that policy?
Well, right now it's in the minutes that we approved it on. It's not reflected in our board docs, but it's still a policy of this board.
But how could we, I'm just curious, because I really spent a lot of time on this. How can it be a policy if there's no policy number
It was moved, seconded, voted upon,
as?
and as a policy, and there was a first and second read of it.
Aren't you on the policy committee?
So was Simon.
Pro Simon.
So is that something that, the norm with our policy people,
Is it a
does he just not put that in yet?
That's my-
If we want to send it to Norm to assign a number, we can do that. Neola assigns all the numbers.
Right.
You know,
So
I'm
as of
wondering.
today, what I'm asking though, is it as of now a policy?
It is a policy.
Or is it?
It's just not been added to our manual probably.
Well,
It's
not
voted
sure
on,
about
right? It's
that.
effective.
Or is it a process?
The recommended action when we voted on this was actually recommended approval of the procedures to
Right, it's
appoint
not a
library
policy.
trustees. And maybe that was our oversight, that
Right.
we did not approve it as a policy. I don't.
That's kind of how I'm
Maybe
reading
that's
it.
why it didn't get entered with the number.
Right, I'm reading it as a
Maybe it is
procedure.
policy.
I can't remember if it was this item or if it was another item, but
Well, she just read
we
it.
had, I know, but we had a discussion of, is it a policy, is it procedures? I know-
Let me just read the first sentence.
What if?
This policy does not and is not intended to modify the Tipp City Public Library Board of Trustees or the Board of Education's respective rights, obligations, duties as provided for by Ohio law. This policy's sole purpose. So clearly it's a policy. I mean, it's in writing, it's in there, we've approved it. You can call it what you want, but it's a policy that was approved by this board.
Well, I'm not so sure that's your
Recommended
opinion.
action says it's
So what-
approval of
what
the
does it
procedure.
say? Karina was gonna ask you, what were you reading?
If you
Where are
go
reading that
to
from?
the
August board docs.
August 23rd meeting, under the actions, we have it listed as a the recommended action is recommend approval of the procedures to appoint the library trustees.
Can you let me catch up with you?
And it's item 6. no.
August 23, I don't have an August 20. Oh, sorry. Wrong year.
And it's item 8, old business. And then it's listed as library trustee appointment process.
Right, because I think that the differentiation is the document says policy, but we have it as a process. So there seems to be a little bit of,
Confusion.
confusion.
So then it's not a policy.
I don't think it's a policy, because if we didn't submit it to Norm in August, it's still either a guideline or a procedure. Am I correct?
Point of order, Norm is not a member of this board. This
Oh,
Board
no,
of
I'm asking Mr.
Education
Stefani.
determines.
Yeah,
I'm asking
I did
Mr.
not-
Stefani.
I did not submit it to Norm.
Right. So I'm asking you a procedural question. So if we did not submit it to Norm, the only way we can get an official policy is it goes through Norm, correct or not?
No.
No? Okay.
He assigns it a number.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
He assigns it a number.
Gotcha.
The board decides if it's a policy.
However,
Understood.
we voted, and I'm looking at the motion and the voting of that. 1, 2, 3, yeah, all 5. The vote was on the approval of the procedures. It wasn't approval of a policy. And you voted for that, Mr. Patry,
Right.
voting of the
All right.
procedures.
So there is administrative guideline manual, it's listed under policy. Probably needs to have a number assigned to it and which section it would go into. Which is probably the 1,000.
Well, an administrative guideline is generally predicated on a policy. It's the policy that helps set the administrative guideline. Am I correct on that?
They typically share the same number.
Yeah.
Well, the policy would be, the board approved the nomination of the trustee recommended by the library board. That's policy. The procedures are the how that steps are then implemented. So either way, if we need a policy number assigned to it or procedure number, it just needs to get filed.
We might have to revote
Yeah.
to approve it as a board
I
policy.
think so. I'm confused.
I just want it to be clean because it's taken us a year
Yes.
to do all this work and it's easy to miss stuff. It's the first time doing this. It's taken us a year to get to this point. I want to make sure that we do everything correctly. So the next board and the board after, it's very clear and very outlined and there's no gray areas. I'm not on the policy committee, so
Well, this one actually never went to the policy.
that's
committee
right.
because
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
We worked on it for a year.
Right, it was the biggest development night, if you will, was the combined meeting between the
Yeah.
Board of Trustees and the Board of Education.
Right.
Yeah.
So just as an educational piece for myself, let's just say hypothetically, you keep this as a procedure. then where does that get housed? How does one, let's say we all vanish tomorrow.
Yeah, how do you pull it up?
How does one, that institutional memory, how's that preserved as a procedure? Is there a procedure book? I mean, I've never seen one, so.
No, there's not a, right now, there's not a filing category for procedures. We have a filing category for policies, we've got a filing category for administrative guidelines. Administrative guidelines are closer to the definition of procedure.
And we talked about using institutional memory, I know
Oh, that came
sometimes
up,
in this.
yeah, that came up.
So I think the prudent thing, I mean, a procedure, like I said, I think that something should be cataloged and retrievable. That's just part of the fidelity of a process.
Right.
So.
And if we missed a step or something, let's just fix it, make it correct and move on.
Well, the action is we approve the procedures or the policy. What we're concerned about is, what is it called? But the guidelines are approved. The steps in the document that was drafted have been approved. So at this point, I would just recommend we give it to the policy committee to figure out how to assign it a number and where to file it. And that's Ann and Simon.
But we still have to vote on.
Yeah, if the board wants, we can use Norm as a consultant for that conversation too.
Yeah, but the item that we are voting on right now is the appointment of the trustee that's been recommended. We're not.
Right, and part of that, go ahead, sorry, I did not mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Well, that's what the motion's for. The motion is to approve that candidate. If we want to, we're getting sidetracked looking at procedural and naming rights as far as what this process is called. This nomination of this recommended trustee is evidence that the procedures work.
This board got together with the library board, then we met independently. This board directed me to make revisions to a policy that was first grabbed by Shaker Heights to provide the library board the ability to be independent in nominating their trustees and bringing them back to us to ensure we were voting on them on a timely fashion and the way we're supposed to do. This entire board reviewed that, was all part of the discussions. It was approved by everybody here, whether you call it a policy or procedure. It's what everybody in this room said we were going to do. So now that, whether you call it procedure or policy or guideline, everybody approved it. That policy provides that we, when we're presented a trustee, have to approve it. So right now we've been presented a trustee nomination by the library board that a policy or procedure that we all approved requires that we accept. So I'm not sure what's going on right now, but if we want to talk about whether it's a policy or procedure, I would suggest that we table that to a work session. And right now we just take action on item 10E so we can move on and get this done tonight.
Part of approving that is that the procedure had to be followed. And I just have a question on 10A. In order to maximize the pool of candidates, the Board of Education and the Tipp City Public Library Board of Trustees shall, and then there's A, B, and C. So I don't have any knowledge of this, but does anybody in this room know if this was published in the Tippecanoe Gazette?
This recent one, I don't
Yeah.
recall seeing that.
I don't.
The first one was, I remember that.
Yeah, so I remember that was a big point of our conversation, was that we wanted advertised in the Gazette, not just on Quick News, not just in the lobby of the library, that in order to serve the entire community, it should be advertised in the newspaper. So, in looking at this section 10A, B, and C, I wish it were spelled out more clearly. So if we do have to go back and revise that, that would be a suggestion. It just says local media. So if the board wishes, that's something that could be tightened up.
But that's not our job, that's the library trustees.
No, it's both
job.
of us. It's ours, Board of Education and library working together on this.
Why are we inserting ourselves with the library board again? I mean, they've brought us the candidate. Let's just approve it and we can fine tune anything later on. I don't want to spend all night rehashing a policy. We spent many hours as a group, including the library, hashing over and discussing in great detail. We don't need to be inserting ourselves in the library board's business.
I don't think we're inserting ourselves, Simon. We want to make sure that everybody in our community has an opportunity to serve on the library trustee board. And one of those ways of receiving that information is to put it in the local paper.
Do you
We
have-
talked about this for.
Do you have actual factual knowledge that it wasn't put into the paper?
No, did you not hear me ask the question?
So, I mean,
started the conversation.
I understand that, but
Does
like,
anybody
why are
know?
you?
I never saw it. I mean, I can just tell.
Right,
you
that was a big-
And the typical news is that.
The motion is to approve this person. We can table the conversation.
Yeah, we can table it, but in order to approve this, we want to make sure that the procedures and the guidelines that we spent a year on have been adhered to. Right? That was part of the thing is the board and the library wanted to work together. And that's how we came up with this 2-page process. So,
I don't think it's unreasonable, Simon, for somebody to ask if the very lengthy
1 year long.
process did it go into play? Did it happen the way we all agreed for it to happen?
Right.
I don't think that's inserting anybody into anything, asking, did we do what we said we were gonna do? Clearly, we probably should have done that after Stagecrafters, because when we left saying, yeah, don't cut any more POs to people that are working with kids, and then we don't circle back around and re-question, guess what happens? People make the same mistakes again.
So here's another question. I'm just curious. That protocol of where it should be advertised, that was one of my, I brought that up initially out and that I said, hey, it has to be a really due diligent effort to let the community know that that position is available. So if it's not, then what does that mean? I mean, in other words, what's the value of having it in there? If there's not a remedy for, it's not really nothing's a right unless there's a remedy to correct the wrong of that right.
So Teresa, you're the board president and you're the representative along with Simon that serves as some sort of intermediary to the library board of trustees. I would recommend if you have questions like that, you could ask the president of the library board to satisfy that inquiry.
I did ask. I asked a question. Oh, sorry, your question? Okay.
Well, are you asking us rhetorically or did
No.
you direct that question to the library board?
My question was, I forget, I just clicked off that screen, but we're supposed to have 1 or 2 board members invited to the interviews. We only received a 48-hour notice. So to let the board know on Monday that the interviews are going to be on Wednesday, it's kind of difficult to change your schedule in 48 hours. So I did reach out about that and they apologized and said, yes, we are sorry. Clearly we, in a perfect world, would want to give more than 48 hours. So did anybody here attend those final interviews?
I was booked.
Yeah, I responded back that it would be unlikely that a board member would be able to attend in such short notice. And regarding the Gazette piece, I did reach out to Mr. Stefanik to see if he knew if it was advertised in the Gazette or not. So
I'm sure that I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
I would assume that there's price tag to advertise in the Gazette.
Probably.
And are we shouldering that expense?
we talked about that, and
I don't believe we're able to shoulder that expense.
did we talk about, I forget how we left
I'm not
that.
sure.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Well, the city government, they advertise all their board positions. They have quite a few. I mean, they're always,
There are a lot in paper.
yeah, they're tree boards, they're.
But again, the
Okay.
motion on the table is to approve the person that's been nominated. And that's what we're supposed to be focusing on.
Right, and then there's discussion. So we made the motion, we got the second, and then there's always discussion, and then we vote. Is there any further discussion?
I think it needs to be tabled again, honestly, to put a better, I want it, if it's a policy, it should be presented as such as a policy And now that we've already encountered what I think the lack of community information, that due diligence like in the paper, what does that mean moving forward? I mean, if there's not a corrective measure or a countermeasure to not doing that, then why even have it in there?
We've already approved their last trustee without us having a policy or procedure in place. That was somebody named Judith. Now, this is another one, another appointment. The nominee for the motion is to approve this nominee. If you want to put an agenda item to talk about the process and the procedures.
I thought it was a policy at the time, Jill, and I really
Okay,
did.
the policy or procedure, regardless, if you're having questions about whether the process was followed, adhered to, is it really is the policy that we want, or the procedure, whatever we're gonna call it. That's not what this is about. This is approving this nominated person.
I completely disagree with you. This is wholly about this. This is the first time that we've had an opportunity to question and test whether a policy or a procedure that we created worked.
That's not.
Now, why would we add this to a different meeting? We're addressing somebody right now before us and we're questioning, did what we worked so hard to accomplish?
You can.
No, I'm not.
Your tone a little bit.
Did what we worked so hard to accomplish work, or did it not? And that's a very simple question that we should all be okay with examining. And one of the questions about that is, was it advertised as we all agreed to have it done? And nobody knows. So look, now we've discovered a situation where maybe our policy needs to be shored up in some instances.
We don't even know.
And I don't think questioning that makes anybody a bad person.
We're not questioning that. The motion is to approve the person that they nominated.
And we're questioning
You're questioning
if the
process.
policy
Point of
and
order,
the
there's no need to yell.
process
There's no need
was
to yell.
followed.
There's no need to yell.
Down.
I am not yelling, and when I do yell,
voice is
you will
elevated.
definitely
Corinne's
know.
point, there were three, what I received, there were three applicants. What if this had been more mass advertised? Maybe that would have been 6 applicants. I don't know. I mean, we don't really know. And I know you're shaking your head, Joanne, but this is, there are people here in this community that really value the library. Some of them are elderly, some of them do not have modern technology, do not have computers. I'm not going to mention any names. We have someone in this room. And it's, the paper is valuable to them. That is a source of information. And that could also affect their decision whether or not, hey, I think I'd like to be on that library. I'd like to submit. It's just inclusion. It's just about inclusion.
Yeah.
And
I'm not arguing against any of that. My point is, a lot of those questions should have been asked and answered before we got to this part of the agenda.
I have one other question, because if it's in there, what is this? You have a time frame. If you have to appoint, but what was it,
45 days.
45 days after the term
Expires.
starts? No, after it expires, by 45 days. So
Right.
technically you'd have until, if it
February
expires.
15th, sort of.
No, it expires the end of December, does it not? Isn't
The
it?
term expires the end of December, then you
Yeah,
have 45
5 days
days.
after that.
So that would be like February 15th.
Oh, February, I'm sorry, yeah. So I agree that I think there are still a few kinks in here that
Tweaks in the
that
process.
should be worked out, including make it a policy. I'm not comfortable with something just being a procedure that, like I said, if we're not all here tomorrow, who's going to be able to find that? Who's going to be able to pull that up and say, policy XXX?
Again, I would caution that the motion is to approve this person. You have every right to question whether the process was followed or not. That has nothing to do with the person that they're recommending. What you're suggesting, though, is that if you find out that the steps were not followed, then you don't think that we should approve this person's that was recommended.
Not exactly. My question really was, if we find out steps were not followed and there is a person before the board for consideration, how does one address that scenario? Does one ignore the fact that steps were not followed?
Well,
And there's
that's
several
between-
questions here.
That's between Mrs. Dunaway and Mr. Patrick, because there are appointed representatives with the library. if you had these questions, you probably should have been addressing them with the library trustee president to find the answer. That has nothing to do with the person that is being recommended.
I think it's totally interlinked, Joella. I don't know how it cannot be. The process is linked to the
how you got that
the candidate
person.
is linked to how that process was executed.
We approve this. We have no discretion in the matter.
Well, again, Mr. Patrick, you kept presenting it as a policy. I just thought you would know whether or not whether you were championing a policy or not. So
It's pretty clear to me. This is a policy. I don't care whether you call it a procedure or a policy. It is something that we are required to take action on.
Yeah.
We all unanimously approve this thing. And so it's pretty easy.
Oh, well, you're gonna get your Is everything okay?
It's just someone coming into the meeting. It's not a big deal.
Do you want to talk? Shut the doors because you're listening to our meeting. All we can hear is that.
Simon, you were the one that mentioned institutional memory many times.
Yeah, and I know what I said. We all approve this. The procedure or policy, whatever you want to call it, is clear. We have no discretion in this. We all approved it. So if you guys want to try to back out, that's fine. But I move to call the vote.
And I,
Did you shut the doors? Okay. Okay, sorry, little disruption there. Any further comment before we vote?
I feel there needs to be more clarity. Like Mrs. Dahl said, moving forward, we worked hard on this. You know, it seems like we have time. If you're looking at February 15th, of course, I don't want to wait that late whatsoever. I'm not suggesting that at all. But all I'm saying is by maybe moving to December, another final discussion is not going to put us in jeopardy of missing a deadline. We're sending it to the probate court, I don't think.
So right now we have a motion and a second for 10E. So if you're suggesting something, that has to be an official motion and a second, because right now the motion on the floor with a second is recommend approval of the following Tipp City Library Board of Trustee nomination. So did you want to take action on what you just said with your suggestion or not?
I'm not sure how to word it, to be honest with you, how to make it a motion.
Then we need to vote. If you're not gonna make a motion, we're gonna vote. Okay, ready for the vote, Melanie?
Heatherly,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Dahl,
Abstain.
Dunaway,
Abstain.
and Zakor.
Abstain.
Okay, motion carries. Oh, no. This just happened the last time, motion carries.
Yeah.
It was a little different, okay. 10F, Capital Conference Highlights. Well, you presented, so do you want to start? Oh, yeah, you presented, so why don't you, and your name is in this book.
There's a lot of names in that book.
There, but yours.
Yeah, it was good. We did the science of reading and implementing that. And I believe Mark and Melanie and Teresa came, yeah. And it's just about the big process, moving from a balanced literacy approach to education, which is pretty much everything the Ohio State University, Fontes and Pinnell came out of Ohio State, and making that change and educating in front of a change as broad and wide-reaching as phonics, and selecting your materials, educating everybody involved from the top down, and what that process looked like for us and felt like, and just encouraging other districts to take on the work. It's good work.
Great.
Yeah.
Any other highlight? Was that your highlight?
That's my highlight.
Okay. Do you want to go next? Mr. Savonic, Mrs. Fox, Mrs. Zakor?
Yeah, well,
Jump in.
I'll play off of that.
Yeah.
The part I appreciated about that was the discussion about the process. And it wasn't I guess, a sales pitch for a particular program. The Johnson reading is this here, buy this, and then you've got everything fixed up. So I appreciated the information about the process that you went through to, again, educate, bring the folks on board, so that everybody could move forward with the implementation together.
It's painful. There's a lot of tears involved in changing those mindsets because you educate because you believe that what you did was the best thing to do for kids.
Right.
And then when presented with information that says, oh, maybe not, it's a struggle. So.
And I just appreciated the conference, the wide array of things that you can address, get information about everything from A to Z. And it's they bring together a lot of experts in a lot of different fields, and so there's a lot. There's too many good sessions. You can't get to them all. So you download the PowerPoints and hope you can get something off of a session you missed. So.
There were several interesting lectures that I was very proud to see Mrs. Dahl up there, by the way. That was great, because it's a big deal. I went to a couple of the continuing legal education seminars, which I always like. And there were several things on the Open Meetings Act, which I was very, very interested in. And got to speak with some attorneys afterwards, and just to sort of get a clarity check on some things for our own district. And gosh, what else did I attend? This year I felt like there wasn't as much geared towards board governance in terms of advanced board governance. There was a lot of new member board governance topics, so I was a little surprised to see that.
Kind of off your, Ellie, do you have any highlights or no? No?
I had a great time being there, learning. I thought it was informative, maybe not as quite as much many sessions for the treasurer necessarily. I mean, there were some that hit on finances. The second day, the last event that I did, I think it was that day before we were leaving. That was my best session. I thought, just overall, talked for treasurer. I thought it was a good time.
I think COVID had an impact on.
Yeah, there were a lot of
attendance and speakers
kind of related
compared to 2019 when I attended. I felt
some of my sessions were during the general session, so I wasn't able to experience both days of the general session. I don't know how it went.
So one of the things I get, oh, sorry, are you?
I'm finished.
Okay.
I hope you all had a nice time that attended.
I
thought it was good.
It's very important.
Okay. So I had a 3-hour meeting, which was the Ohio School Board Association Delegate Handbook. It's their annual business meeting of Ohio School Board Association, and it's their delegate assembly where it's a pretty big deal. Governor DeWine spoke for about 20 minutes. And one of the things that we all had to vote on was the 2022 proposed Ohio School Boards Association legislative platform. And it is an entire book of information. Very involved. And it all started with this particular board. They kind of came together with everything in this book at their July 31st meeting. So it was about a 40-page email that I read to kind of see, where this came, kind of getting the backstory and all of this. But one of the, and there were kind of like our citizen comments at this meeting, people get to come up and comment whether you want to vote yes on the bill, no, and you get to kind of tell your side. One of the big things that got voted on was the racism and equity changes in the language in that. And in order for it to pass the delegate assembly, it needed 75%. So people spoke very passionately for or against, and it got 72.1%. So it was very, very close. We actually had to vote 3 different times because they kept counting the cards. So that's going to be something that Ohio school boards, all local Ohio school boards, are going to keep their eye on, that language, because this will get voted on again next year at Capitol Conference. So yeah, it was a 3-hour meeting and it's very informative. And I'm going to give the book to you because you are listed in the book, because as you know, you are the Southwest Region Legislative Platform Committee person. So I got that book for you.
All right, any update in that meeting about the Ohio School Board choosing not to align with the National School Board?
That had already been decided prior.
No.
It didn't come up,
nothing connected?
no. A good question, though. You would have thought it did, but I think because it had already been kind of decided, and it was a 3-hour meeting. I left at the 3-hour mark and I left early. So it may have come up at the end, but I don't think it did because we pretty much followed the order of the book. So I could be wrong. Go ahead, what's your question?
Yeah, I do, and I don't mean to go backwards off
Yeah.
the topic here, but as you were discussing.
Yeah.
The library vote. I went back up to the 5-year forecast because we have the abstentions and.
Yeah.
So approval of the 5-year forecast, my motion says that it failed in here.
Okay,
So I'm concerned about that. Because what I had, and I almost now I need to go back and listen to the video for sure, because
It's an error.
I had motion by Joellen, second by Teresa, and then I have 3 abstains. Which means failed.
No, because
That's what the system is
the way
saying.
I understand it, we had this mistake before in 2019.
yes, we did.
With open
Open
enrollment
enrollment.
because of that program.
Mhm.
And the way I understand it is that when you abstain, that doesn't count as a for or against. So you have to look at the votes left, which in this recent scenario was 2. And both voted affirmative. So it's a majority vote. 2 out of 2 voted, the majority won. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If the 2 remaining voters left, one had voted yes, the other had voted no, then you don't have a majority.
So this one I have 2 yeses,
And 3 abstentions.
and that was the same as the library vote.
Right, and the library vote passed this.
So right, but my system says when I have 2 yes and 3 abstain, I have a fail.
That's, we determined that was an error before. I mean, you can check it, but I'm pretty confident of it.
Also, by policy.
I'm just concerned about the forecast because it's got to be submitted by the 30th, and if I have a fail, then we're coming back together.
Yeah. It always boils down to the majority vote. Was a majority attained? And when you take the abstentions off the table, then you're looking at the people that voted. And in both of those cases, it was two affirmatives. Your 5-year forecast and the library. So therefore, in my view.
And I think the vote in here, and I will listen to the video and make sure this is accurate. I don't understand.
I'm Googling.
I don't understand the system here. So that concerns me. For
I'm
forecast,
right
I mean, the vote for the library, we have time if we have to come back together and we vote, but not for forecast.
Yeah, I think when it does fail is when you don't have a majority. You have 2 left and one's no, one's yes.
What do you think, Mark, on that? What should
I'm
we
reading
do?
right now.
There was a mistake last year.
Yeah.
With that system.
Open enrollment.
The system said that because they didn't get to 3 of the 5 members, they put it down as a no. And then when they checked on it, it was an affirmative vote because it was 2 to 1 to 1, I think, that vote. So we have to see, and I'm checking Robert's Rules of Orders about abstentions.
Yeah, I'm Googling it right now. Okay. We
Well,
can,
May
go
I
ahead.
add something?
Yeah, sure.
There are some votes per policy that require a full board vote. Now, I realize the full board is here, but I
Right.
don't know what that means for abstentions, and I don't know what it means for the approval of the 5-year forecast.
Well, if we find out differently, have
Have
Mark
to call a special meeting to vote on this.
Right.
Well, and I don't know if I'm allowed to ask why we're abstaining, because I just want to understand. You know, if it's a no, it's a no. If it's a yes or a yes, or why you abstain,
Yeah.
because I just want to understand if there's something I don't want to, I can't submit our 5-year forecast to the state without board approval.
Okay, I asked.
So if there's something I need to do to it, I'll certainly have to.
Go ahead.
I asked that at OSBA,
Oh.
and I was at their booth and there was a treasurer there. And we have a treasurer, I believe, in the audience. And so what I was told is that, because I said, I'm not a treasurer. I look at this as surface value and I'm endorsing it. What am I setting myself up for some type of liability? He said, absolutely no, because basically you're not the treasurer and you are endorsing it on a face value, and that it's more an endorsement that it's been presented to you. You've seen it, you've reviewed it, and therefore, yes. So I don't know. And I'm not in the treasury world.
She has to certify it.
Yes, and so I was told that they don't, the auditor doesn't expect us to have that knowledge and discernment of this or that. Our role was just that it was properly presented, that we reviewed it, we did, there was no hokey pokey stuff going on here.
Maybe I just need to have it presented to the board.
You could always maybe reach out to Helen
Yeah,
and
let us
ask
know.
her. I mean, that's what she's there for.
Right.
Well, Mr. Maines,
And my concern is to the library
vote
vote, because it sounds like we're on the same path with the library vote.
Well, I'm treasurer for Rotary. It's a totally different situation, so.
Well, you're an accountant,
Well,
right?
we're not gonna put Mr. Mays on the hot seat here.
I'm sure we're gonna put
No,
Mr.
we're
Maines
not
on the
doing
hot
that.
seat.
Well, we can talk about 1099s
Yeah,
if
we're
you
not,
want.
we're not talking about that.
And it is
Okay.
600, always was
So
600.
any other,
Okay.
Yeah.
before I move on,
500, maybe unless they decide to just do the 500 at the other place.
Yeah.
So it's gonna go under that. Fast, but anyway.
okay, before I move on, did anybody else want to talk about capital conference highlights? Are we good? Everybody got covered? Okay. All right, so citizen comments. Oh, hang on, I just filed the paper in Melanie's folder. We have 2 more citizen comments. Lydia Plyman? She's still here? Hi.
Yes, ma'am.
Come on in. Name and address, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, Lydia Plyman, 6385 Peters Road, Tipp City. Thank you all for opening this up to citizen comment again. It's good to see all of you. I'd like to speak to the board tonight about critical race theory. More specifically, I would like to address social emotional learning. It's easy to blow off critical race theory as a talking point. However, it's cancerous, so it must be taken seriously and dealt with swiftly. There are many areas that have been infected. I've been doing research, and 5 minutes really doesn't give room to do it justice, but I'm going to try. Parents received the following email, which was then sent to me by several concerned parents, and I'm just going to read part of it. Quote, with the continued commitment to addressing social and emotional barriers to learning, we will be administering the Pupil Attitudes for Self and School PASS survey from October 15th to November 15th, developed by a team of educational psychologists from multiple universities. Ellipses. The PASS survey will allow our school to proactively address non-academic barriers to learning, which can compromise the well-being and academic success of our students. PASS will be administered this month and then again in the spring to determine the effectiveness of any interventions or changes made by the school to address student needs. Note, PASS is already administered to our students during the 2020-21 school year. All this sounds innocuous, but so do the first mutated cancer cells. The cursory research into PASS leads to terms such as equity, which is distinctly a term of critical race theory. I could not fathom why a board elected by an overwhelmingly conservative town would embrace Bolshevistic activism in the form of social emotional learning. But then I thought maybe it didn't originate with them. So I continued my search to education.ohio.gov. And we can find in the quote guide to 2021 Ohio School Board Report Cards page number 2, quote, the goal is to ensure high expectations and equitable outcomes for all Ohio students, end quote. Not equal inputs, equitable outcomes. It removes exceptionalism, and this is critical race theory. Going back to the website, education.ohio.gov, search CASTLE, that's Charlie Alpha Sierra Echo Lima. This stands for the Collaborative Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, CASTLE. Midway down, you will find CASTLE implementation tools. I encourage parents and community members to click through the subsequent links. I think you will be horrified. The Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act statute, FERPA, describes circumstances under which local educational agencies and other organizations are authorized to release confidential data regarding individual students, teachers, and schools without prior parental consent. Confidential information such as potentially that collected on the PASS survey, can be disclosed to organizations as stated in section 2.2. This means an individual student's data that is being collected under the PASS survey can potentially be shared. Currently in North Carolina, they are asking children under a different version of social emotional learning as young as 8, how many sexual partners they have they ever sold drugs at 8. I'm not saying that that is the point of PASS because this is a different program, but it falls into the same vein. I am merely encouraging you to look into what data they're collecting and where it is being sent. Right now, we have 119 students down in 1 year because parents are unhappy with the direction that this district is going. And that's just general enrollment. Open enrollment is down 19 students, and people have 80 people being homeschooled because they're uncomfortable with what's going on. So I highly encourage you to reject outright critical race theory. It's poison. My children will not be white. And this is the hill that I die on. They're not going to be told they can't accomplish things because they're not white. It's disgusting and it's poisonous. In the meantime, I recommend any board members, parents, and community members who are concerned or want to learn more, pick up a copy of the book, Counter Wokecraft, a field manual for combating the woke in the university and beyond. And beyond that, anybody that still wants to continue sending me emails, please feel free, my email is active. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Santucci? Thank you. Name and address and 5 minutes, please.
Sure. I'm Lisa Santucci. I live at 426 South 3rd Street. And more importantly, I am the director of the Tipp City Public Library. I drove here directly from the Marching Band Award Night, which I'd like to mention that the Marching Band was at BOA in Indianapolis for Bands of America last week. I didn't know if that got mentioned, and it was fabulous, and they did a phenomenal job. I want to let you know that an ad was placed in the Tipp Gazette during the month of October. I do not have the exact date because I wasn't able to search for it while I was driving. For several weeks, it was a half-page ad advertising the Board of Trustee position. Every item, policy, procedure, every policy, item, thing, procedure in your document that was created jointly by our board has been followed to a T. However, more importantly, the information could have been communicated via email and answered in advance to this meeting. Our library board president did send an email offering to attend this meeting, and it could have cleared up any confusion, but his attendance was declined. Again, we're following the policy and we hope to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, upcoming meetings. The next regular board meeting will take place on Monday, December 13th, 2021 at the Board of Education office beginning at 6 p.m. Looking for a motion and a second to adjourn.
Move.
Second, Mrs. Dahl and Mrs. Dunaway. Ready for the roll call, Melanie?
Dahl,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Zakor. Yes.
Motion carries. Good one.